If you want a safe and enjoyable experience while scuba diving, don't make these mistakes. Welcome back to Tampa Bay Diving. My name is Blake and I'm a professional recreational scuba diving instructor and digital content creator. If you're new to the channel, consider diving down, hitting that subscribe button and the dive bell because I make these videos with the sole purpose of helping you improve your dives. Scuba diving is an inherently dangerous sport. It says so right in the manual. No matter if you're training with PADI, NAUI, SDI, SSI, etc., there's just no other way around it. You're taking a cylinder of compressed gas down to depths that humans were never meant to be at, with the potential of plenty of things that can go wrong. As instructors, it's our job to teach you how to do it with proper techniques to mitigate those risks. Still, every year, there are plenty of dive accidents where divers weren't following their SOP or standard operating procedure. So I thought we'd make this video with just some of the do's and don'ts that could keep you away from the local hospital. Make sure to stick around to the end though to help make you a better, safer diver. Safe diving doesn't start when you enter the water or even when you've loaded all of your gear on the boat. It starts days and potentially weeks beforehand, and that is related to your health and fitness. We're getting into the winter season now, which is the time of the year when the majority of illnesses happen. With diving, we're more so focused on respiratory and ear injury. I shouldn't have to say this, but you'd be surprised at how many divers actually follow these. If you aren't feeling well and have recently had any illness with congestion, trouble breathing, or ear pain, and you have a dive coming up, you should probably cancel it. You're more than likely not going to have an enjoyable experience and the potential for injury is just too great. If you're already having trouble breathing, what do you think is going to happen when you subject your body to increased atmospheric pressure and a heavier workload? You may dismiss it, but I've personally seen a diver get back in the water just a couple days of being removed from having pneumonia. With any congestion of the nose, that can increase sinus pressure, which could make you feel like you're wearing a mask 10 times too small and with an increased force pressing hard against your face. It can also make it more difficult to clear your ears. And with any kind of injury or illness regarding your ears, you most definitely, 1000%, should not get back into the water until you've been cleared to do so by your physician. Now let me be clear, if you have an ear injury or illness and you go diving, you could risk ending your diving career forever or at least a very long time. So if you've been sick or injured, wait to get back into the water until you're authorized to do so by your attending physician or ENT specialist. Why make matters worse? Tip number 2, check, and check again. Checking your gear and making sure that you haven't forgotten a crucial piece of gear or that everything is working properly is frequently overlooked by some divers. The night before you dive, you should be setting up all of your gear and testing it to make sure there aren't any issues with it. That way, if say your second stage isn't working properly, then you can determine if the issue can be addressed, whether you need to swap it out for a spare, or if you need to rent gear from the operator. Obviously, it's important to make sure that an apparatus designed to help you breathe is fully functional. But what about other aspects of your gear? Equipment such as cutting devices, lights, and a DSMB need to be on you at all times. While it is a rare occurrence for a diver to be left behind or separated from the group or the boat, it does happen. Having a big bright SMB or DSMB will allow you to be located easier by the boat or rescue crews. A quality light with a strobe feature will also increase your chances at night. There are far few scenarios that are more terrifying than actually being lost at sea, and especially at night. Also, it's not out of the realm of the possibilities for divers to become entangled in debris such as nets, fishing line, or other material. Having a quality cutting device will enable you to free yourself to be able to get back to safety. Tip number 3. Another mistake that divers do that leads to a potential fatal outcome is rapid ascents and poor buoyancy. A rapid ascent from depth is sometimes caused by panic. More than likely, the diver is running low on air. They may not have been paying attention to their gas usage, and if you've ever had that last breath from a cylinder, it can be quite terrifying. Scared that they won't be able to breathe, they rocket up to the surface to get another breath. As we spend time at depth, our bodies are collecting more and more nitrogen. We need to ascend slowly and safely so that as doing so, we can expel as much of that as possible. Similarly to the air in our BCD, the nitrogen that gets into your blood is under pressure at depth. And when you're surfacing, that pressure is released, and if it's done too fast, then it can form bubbles, which could cause an embolism inside your body. This often leads to the bends, which could require time in a decompression chamber. The best thing to do in an out of air situation is to signal your buddy that you are out of air and you run a share air drill and make a slow, safe ascent with them. Another cause could be that they're not letting air out of their BCD during their ascent. When you're at depth and neutrally buoyant, that air is compressed down to a certain volume. But as you start coming up, the pressure is relieved and you're not going to need as much air at 30 feet that you would at 60 feet. So as that air is expanding, it is causing you to be more buoyant and will make you surface too fast. Monitor your ascent rate on your computer or gauge while releasing the air out of your BCD during an ascent. As far as poor buoyancy, whether you're rising or sinking, that can have different outcomes. You could either be too buoyant and that lead to an uncontrollable ascent, or you could be too negatively buoyant and end up sinking at depth that isn't safe for you, which could lead to bumping into, let's say, fire coral or some other kind of venomous creature. The second rule in scuba diving is don't touch the wildlife. And that is because many of them are venomous and their poisons can be toxic to the human body. At the very least, it could just be excruciatingly painful. I was on a boat one day when a diver who was not in control of his buoyancy landed on a lionfish. The whole ride back to the dock, he was in a great deal of pain and screaming that he felt like he was on fire. Tip number 4, monitoring your gauges. Paired with our last tip, another common mistake is divers not monitoring their gauges for air and depth. And we've already talked about divers running out of gas and a rapid ascent rate. But the other side of that is not monitoring your depth throughout the dive. You should be checking your gauges and or dive computer at least once per minute. That way you always know what depth you're at and how much air you have. The reason is so that you don't go beyond your certification limits and for the blend of gas that you are using. Most divers starting out are going to be diving on regular air or nitrox. And nitrox is a gas blend that has higher percentages of oxygen than standard air. And this is done to cut back on the effects of nitrogen. Where the issue lies is that oxygen at certain depths becomes toxic to the body. It all depends on the blend you are diving and certification level to how deep you can go. If you're not paying attention and start drifting down to a depth which is unsafe, you could end up in a deadly situation. So monitor those gauges so that you're always keeping track of your depth and how much gas you have in your cylinder. If it's going to take you a bit to safely ascend, you want to know that you have enough air to last. Tip number 5, diving beyond your certification limits. Another common mistake, especially here in Florida, is divers not sticking within their certification limits. As you may have or will learn, there are many different activities you can partake in the diving world. From caves to wrecks to night diving, scientific research, deep, ice, and so on. In Florida, we have a vast cave network system for divers to enjoy. And far too often, it seems like I'm reading about another death in the caves, only to later learn that the diver wasn't cave certified. So they not only had no knowledge of skills and procedures, but they were probably unfamiliar with the cave layout they were getting into. This just sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. But the same thing goes with wreck diving. It's very easy to get lost inside of a wreck. We study the layouts of these wrecks before we ever go inside them. But even still, if there is a silt out inside or a diver just gets disoriented, it's very easy to get lost or turned around. In these courses you will take, you will learn skills, drills, and knowledge portions on how to act and proceed through events like this. So guys, please dive within your certification limits. Tip number 6, becoming complacent. As you go on and progress through your diving journey, you will continue to gain and learn from your courses and experiences. The dangerous thing that can happen is divers becoming too complacent with knowledge and skills that they could lead to things getting overlooked. You'd be surprised at how often I see divers get in the water without discussing contingency plans if something happens or goes wrong. For example, you say, we're going to follow this path through the wreck, but no one has a plan on what to do or where to go if, say, that path were to be obstructed. Or having an in-case plan of what to do if there are emergencies. Be smart, guys, when conducting your dives. Just follow all the skills and lessons you were taught during your courses, and that will greatly help mitigate risk. There's also a reason why our motto is plan your dive and dive your plan. Because the best skill you can have is being prepared, and it's something that I firmly believe. Each and every single dive that we conduct is planned, and when we're in the water, we stick to that plan and the contingencies that we have set in place. If you found this information helpful and enjoyed the video, then dive down, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and ring the dive bell. And let me know down in the comments if you witnessed any of these scenarios. And just over here, YouTube thinks you're really gonna love this video, so check it out, watch it, and help us continue to grow the channel. I'll be back next week with another video, but until then, plan your dive and dive your plan.